here's the thing. The reason why, you know, it's often said that science and religion aren't compatible is because essentially they are not. You know, Science doesn't conform to religion. Religion conforms to science. As science gives more information, the religious change their stance and acceptance when it becomes harder and harder to ignore science. Many of the people that accept evolution now probably would have been, and in your case, were people that rejected it years ago when they either didn't know or science didn't have enough information. And this is what happens time and time again. If you give me an example of where science was right all along, where religion was right all along, and science changed to accept what religion said, I'd like to know. Can you give me an example of where religion made an assertion and science changed its mind? And I'm not talking about, so-called science in the Bible and stuff like that, and those claims. I'm talking about actual examples of where religious made a claim and then turned out to be true over what science thought. And this is just a thing to me. You give the example of the rotating table. And I think I've heard about this one before. I know what you're talking about. It rotates and it's a fun little thing, and people have no idea what it is often. They think it's maybe a ghost, or maybe some people just realize that it's all a trick. But here's the thing. You say that, it has intention, that the people that built the place did it to mess with people's heads. The problem is, without actually observing that, or even just asking the people that did this directly, and not hearing second-hand stories, but directly asking them, you can't be sure. If there's, say, a generator in the basement or in the corner of the building, say it's no building and it's secluded, there's no power to it, so it uses a generator. It's a campsite or something. And there's a table that's loosely connected. And the generator creates vibrations. And since the table and the floor is slanted slightly, the table spins in one direction. So over time, on the loose nail, the table slowly rotates in people's things. Now people assume that this was the intention of the owner, and they assume that it's just completely intentional. Whereas this example has no intention. It was completely accidental. People are ascribing to the situation something that isn't true. And this is what it really feels a lot like with religion and whatnot. When you give the example that, science can only say that, we were created through evolution. That's how we got here. Someone like you could say evolution was how God used God used to get us here. That's fine. But you don't have any evidence for it. Your explanation doesn't really fit any more than any other explanation. Here's an explanation that probably not going to be popular with Christians, but I get flack from it. But here's an interesting scenario. What if, the Yahweh, Jesus, God, whatever, just created the universe? He was doing an experiment to see what life forms formed. And on one planet, he happened to find life forms that formed over time, and he was excited. Okay, here's something cool. So he interacts with them. He tries to tell them things, and he says he created them, which he did. But because, as you've said before, their understanding is limited. He has to do things in ways they understand. He tells them that they were specifically created by him, that they were his intention. Because they're too young to understand. It would hurt them to realize that, just as you don't really tell a young kid that, they weren't planned. or the condom broke or something like that, because it's going to hurt the kid. He doesn't tell them that they were unintended. He was intending for maybe something to form, some intelligence, but they were not the outcome. They were not what he intended, actually. So, in this example, the Bible's true, the stories are true, but the outcome was never intended. It was a happy little accident. Maybe God was trying to create just single-celled organisms. And all the ascribing to God's plan for humanity, wanting us to be formed and all this stuff, was either creations of our mind or something that he decided later once he saw us created. All you're doing is, blindly asserting things. And the problem is, let's ignore other religions for a second here. You have every church making completely contradictory statements and ideas about God. I mean, yes, the primary tenets tend to be the same. But you have those that say that God has no issue with homosexuals. You have those that say he does. You have those who says that God doesn't like abortion. You have some that say he does. You have God saying, people saying just about everything about God. And everybody's saying things that can't all be exclusive. Even if God exists, even if God in the Bible exists, majority of the claims that you make about God and statements you make about God are going to be wrong. Just based on reality. You can't, you may get some stuff right. You maybe get more stuff right than others. But you're still going to get some things wrong. And this is the problem. Religion makes assertions and claims that can't be backed up. Even if a God exists or your God exists, your claims have no way of being verified. And this is the problem, and you even admit it. The thing is with science and for me, if we don't have an answer, or we don't know the answer, that's the answer. We don't know. We can't, we don't assert something beyond that. With the Big Bang, cosmology and that, as I made a few videos about this, we've talked about this before. The idea of Victor J. Stenger and whatnot. The Christians say that God was required to create the universe. The physicists say that God was not required to create the universe from our best understanding right now. It doesn't say God didn't create the universe. It's just that for what we know right now, there is no reason to assert God beyond, a need for wanting God to be true. We need evidence that it was God. When the science is showing that, no, this wasn't required by God. God isn't required to do it. You're making assertions that God did it. But that's not backed by the science. Of course, the science isn't saying God didn't do it. It's just saying that, from what we can tell, there's no need to posit God as doing it. Just as, to me, what theists do when they say that God was required to create the universe, this is no different than the creationists saying God was required to create mankind. That evolution is a lie, and there's no way evolution could have created mankind. That's exactly what it feels to me and to those that don't accept the idea of God. This is what it feels like, that you're just asserting that God is needed, just as the creationists are asserting God is needed. And the science is saying, no, he's not needed. And, I don't know. And then you go run into all the problems with many other religions. The Mormons state stuff about God, the universe, creation. Muslims state stuff. Jews state stuff. Hindus state stuff about the universe. All the other thousands of religions around the world. Those are extinct and those are still going. All these religions make completely contradictory statements. And they all make assertions. And to an atheist, there's no reason to accept your religion over any other. You're going to point out the Bible and stuff like that. I'm not convinced, and many atheists aren't. And that's the issue. What comes down to what fits. You're convinced, and you're convinced and believe that the Bible and the stories in the Bible are completely true. So does every other religious person. Your conviction is no more important to me than the conviction of every other religious person. And this is where we run into trouble. I don't know. I'm just treating your religion as I treat every other religion. To make bold assertions that we have no way of backing up or verifying are true, and in many cases are contradictory to what we can tell is true. Now, this is why religion and science aren't compatible. Religions make their religion compatible with science, but science is never going to be compatible with religion. It's going to be the other way around. And even then, you still haven't done anything. You haven't shown that your religion's true or your religion is compatible. You're just making it so. Oh well. Been a while since I made a video to you, Puppy Eternal, and I saw this one, so I just had to make a response. A bit rambly. Sorry for the length.